I think of appreciation as it's sort of like the first door that you open for gratitude. Just the terminology that I've come to use is like we can't be grateful for something we don't appreciate, right? So it's that recognition that there's some sort of benefit, something positive that is helping you meet your needs. Like that is step one to unlocking all these other good benefits for gratitude.
Welcome to Purposeful Empathy, a show that is dedicated to amplifying the voices of people from across the globe who understand the world needs more empathy and are doing something about it. This season includes 25 incredible episodes devoted to the inner development goals. Based on the science of personal transformation, the IDG framework represents 23 skills needed for today's world. And of course, empathy is one of them. You won't want to miss a single episode, so hit the subscribe button now. Thanks for watching and enjoy the show. Welcome to a new episode of Purposeful Empathy. Today I'm joined by Dr. Christina Karns, a neuroscientist whose research is transforming our understanding of how attention, self-regulation, and emotions shape the brain. Christina earned her PhD in neuroscience from the University of California, Berkeley, and currently conducts her research at the University of Oregon. Christina has led neuroimaging projects with children and teens and adults, both with and without disabilities, to explore how attention and self-regulation contribute to healthy neural development. Her work has laid the foundation for evidence-based interventions that harness the brain's neuroplasticity, helping people build healthier relationships with themselves, society, and each other. One of her most notable projects is The Grateful Brain, an fMRI study of generosity and social agency following a gratitude intervention. That groundbreaking research dove into the relationship between gratitude, social reasoning, decision-making, brain function, shedding light on how practices like gratitude can shape our minds and behaviors. Given her research and her expertise, I've invited Christina to join this special IDG series to explore what they refer to as appreciation, one of the 23 traits of the Inner Development Goals framework. So I want to thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show, Christina.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Anita.
Very exciting. I'm teaching a positive psychology class. And now I'm like speaking to one of the luminaries that's at the forefront of this.
Oh, thank you. Too kind.
Too kind, too kind, too kind. Okay, impressive bio and so much to talk about, and I really want to learn more about your research and the sort of exciting things you have coming down the pike. I wonder though if we could get to know you a little better for a minute, and maybe you might want to share something about your background. Maybe you want to color in some of the places in your bio that you want to uplift. So, what do we need to know about you?
Oh, well, I always think of my students when I think about answers to these questions, and I always advise them to really follow your passions and what you're curious and interested about. So I remember even as a kid, what I was really interested in was kind of understanding more what we couldn't see. So I went through my ocean phase, looking into, what was under the surface of the ocean when I was a little kid. And then in college, I discovered more about the brain, and that really just captivated me, I think, because it helps us understand other people, right? But it is also understanding kind of the matter that makes us up as human beings and as matter on this planet. So that's always been kind of what drove me was that curiosity. And I think in that vein, as I kind of learned to focus on attention and neuroplasticity, it's just sort of diving deeper into those aspects of the mind and other people's minds that make us tick.
And for those who are hearing neuroplasticity for the first time and are curious now, what does that mean? I promise we are going to talk about that. So looking forward to it. And obviously, I was attracted to the idea that our brains could change, and we had something to say about our brains changing because we could become more empathic, which, is my passion space. But we can also become more grateful if we choose to, right? So anyways, very excited to unpack that.
Great, great, great. So the IDG framework actually defines appreciation, which I think is close to gratitude as follows. Relating to others and the world with a basic sense of appreciation, gratitude, and joy. So I wonder, does that resonate with you? Would you like to add something? What's your definition of gratitude?
Yeah, I love that. I guess I think of appreciation as it's sort of like the first door that you open for gratitude. Just the terminology that I've come to use is like we can't be grateful for something we don't appreciate, right? So it's that recognition that there's some sort of benefit, something positive that is helping you meet your needs. Like that is step one to unlocking all these other good benefits for gratitude. So I think what's for me different about appreciation than gratitude is that we can appreciate without feeling grateful. So we can feel like happy about something that we did. We can pat ourselves on the back. We can just have a sense of enjoyment. But for me, gratitude kind of takes that one step further or many steps further to where it's almost like a moral emotion that's rooted in humility and a sense that we've been the benefit of someone else's good intent. So we have to recognize there's where the empathy kind of intersects with this is that we have to recognize that some other, social agent, some other person or, entity has given us something because they knew what we needed, right? So appreciation is sort of this meal is delicious to me, and then gratitude is, wow, someone really thought of what kind of food I would like for my birthday, and they really went through an effort to make it nice for me, and I'm really, really grateful for that, and I want to do something nice for them too. So it's kind of like this whole narrative arc of from this initial recognition of a benefit, and then through empathy, through understanding someone else's intent for us, then it sort of resolves into more social connection, reaching back out to someone else, as an expression of our gratitude.
Ooh, this is amazing because the an image that came to me is you could stand at the top of a mountain and look at this glorious vista and you could
Hmm.
appreciate the beauty, but you used words like humility, which really helps
Hmm.
because if you're feeling grateful for what you're seeing, it's a sense of, you know, wow, the splendor of nature and the gift that it is to me, and how I can really savor how lucky I am to be able to enjoy this through my sight or through the fact that I just climbed this mountain. So there's something that's even deeper in gratitude. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. And it connects into something really like deeply rooted for us as human beings because we are just fragile creatures on this planet, here for a short time, and um, we struggle. We express joy, and one of the things that makes our life worthwhile is connecting to others,
Mm.
right? Building loving connections with other people. And gratitude is a tool that we can develop and we can um, become more conscious of this process as a way to enrich our relationships with other people.
So, what would be the benefits from a neurological standpoint, but also from a physical or relational standpoint between the two? So, if I were appreciating things, I
Hmm.
would still get benefits. I mean, I love
Yes.
appreciating things, but maybe you could speak to both.
Um, I think like from a theoretical perspective is sometimes a little easier because the scientific evidence base is still growing. But I'll just share kind of how I'm thinking about it because I love to nerd out on these topics. So for me, appreciation is something that might be a little more fleeting, right? Like we can savor something, and that's definitely valuable. And if we just let the good things in life just pass us by without noticing, then, we're just indifferent or we feel negative. So, of course, appreciation is something really valuable to cultivate. Um, but more of the like moral emotions like gratitude, they're like an investment, that pays back over time. So we can use these neurological processes to make that benefit kind of continue to pay those dividends to us through being motivated to develop closer relationships with other people. So the if your question was about how the brain works too, I could get into that a little bit more now
Yeah,
as well.
please.
Okay. So what research has shown as far as gratitude is that there's a component of gratitude that is about reward. It's about the parts of the brain that give us neurotransmitters that tell us, keep doing that thing. That's really good for me. That feels good. Keep doing that. So it's a reinforcement. Um, but there's also this kind of separate system in the brain that is for empathy. And there are a couple different ways that researchers have approached empathy. And one is that more cold process of perspective taking. I don't mean cold in a bad way. I just mean it's more intellectual, like you're reasoning through what, you know, someone else is thinking and why they're doing what they're doing. But then there's another layer of empathy that's focused on recognizing someone else's emotions. And you're kind of resonating with what they're feeling. A lot of research has actually focused on empathy for pain as opposed to empathy for, joy. But it'd be a study where you're, looking at someone like getting their fingers crushed or something, like just mild, pinching or something where you might recognize that they're in pain or something like that. Um, but then there's quite a bit less research on empathy for the good things. So we've got this reward system. We've got this ability to cognitively take someone's perspective, and we have the ability to kind of resonate with whatever emotion they're experiencing, whether it's pain or whether it's pleasure. And those different systems in the brain, the way I think about gratitude is this is one of those complex emotions that's pulling in and using those systems of the brain to solve this really complex problem. This problem of linking appreciation to someone else's intent to an action that you can take to reinforce that relationship. So for those different components of gratitude, we can actually talk about separate brain systems that work together like a team to solve these more complex moral emotions.
And at the end of the day, our brains light up in the pleasure and reward centers when we're feeling a sense of gratitude, right? And that has
Yes.
what kind of
Mhm.
what kind of physiological benefits does that give us? What are the implications of that, high in our brain?
So, um, the reward systems of the brain um, help us kind of feel a, sense of completion that we have attained something that is worthwhile. Um, when we don't get that reward in the brain, we feel uneasy or anxious, or we might have cravings for something. These are the same parts of the brain that are involved in addiction, that are involved in getting the right answer for a test or something like that. It's really just a system that's connected to the neurotransmitter systems that reinforce um, the behaviors that we are practicing. So it's like a reinforcement mechanism. When folks feel good, it does affect their physiology as well. We know chronic stress is really bad for people's health. There can be cardiovascular um, issues with chronic stress. There's immune system problems with chronic stress. It really puts a lot of miles on the car of our body to have this, chronic state of stress. And the things that we do that make us feel good, appreciating, savoring, resting, taking in a beautiful view, that is going to lower our physiological stress levels that leads to all kinds of health benefits.
Hmm. I'm thinking about also like the hormones and the serotonin and
Mhm,
oxytocin that flow in our body.
mhm,
So that is also all those, if the feel-good hormones replace the stress hormones, our bodies function better as well. So there's just sort of like a healthier body if we
mhm.
are engaging in those kinds of positive psychology. Um, what would you call them? Would you call them emotions? Would you call gratitude an emotion?
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a way of feeling. Okay, so
Yeah.
so if you're making the case as a scientist that guess what? We get the brain lights up, our bodies feel better, we feel better. So like, check, check, check. Why wouldn't we? If the gateway to gratitude is appreciation, is the
Mhm.
invitation to notice things that we appreciate and then to intentionally switch into gratitude around them?
Hmm. Um, yeah, so I would say to develop one's practice to get your black belt in gratitude.
Yeah.
The first kind of basic exercise would be awareness, right? Noticing, devoting your attention, your consciousness to the things that are feeling good. It's just this chair that I'm sitting in is supporting me. I'm pretty comfortable. I feel safe. I'm talking to someone interesting and friendly. So there's all kinds of things that might just kind of pass right by because we're so much in our head about something else and we don't take a minute to just really be present with how good things are even when things are hard. There's also a lot of good that we can recognize. And then I mentioned how that might be sort of fleeting in some ways. Like even though we can develop our capacity to attend to those good things in life, when we're not focused on that, we still might be, oblivious. It might be invisible to us. So I think the benefit of investing in gratitude or in empathy and recognizing other people is again, it kind of provides a way to get more back in the long term, right? Like when we have those close relationships with others that we invest in, those pay dividends in the long term. Now, I'm not saying that everything has to benefit us. There's also, a, a benefit to just being kind, and being selfless. But just in terms of that kind of like reward and the improvements to our health and things like that is, taking it a little further, developing relationships, paying things back, um, and paying things forward in the world is going to make us happier in the long term.
So, okay, oh gosh, I have so many follow-up questions. I want to ask you how the research that you do has changed how you show up in the world as a
Oh,
person. As, I don't know if you're a parent, I don't know if you're a partner, you're a friend and a daughter.
yes.
Like, what impact has it had on you?
Oh, absolutely. From all the years of thinking and writing about this, I feel like, 10 years ago, I was just like a little baby in a lot of ways. Not that I'm like enlightened or anything grand or something like that, but just um, really being specific in the way I thank people that are close to me, right? Like my spouse or even my kids. Um, Naming that they did something kind for me because they care about me, as opposed to just saying thank you, but really getting specific about it. There's just sort of like a melting feeling that happens when we're the recipient of someone else's gratitude. And I like to give that to other people too, because I do really appreciate them. Um, so learning how to close that close that loop where after I kind of go through this process of feeling grateful, which, doesn't take 10 minutes or anything. It's just like, oh, I'm feeling grateful. I need to express that. And then I've been getting better at saying specifically what I'm thankful for. And it's a way for them to know that I've really thought about the way that they intended to benefit me, um, or others.
What comes up for me was my birthday last week.
Mm,
I'm taping this in March, and my daughter she wrote me a card, but it was handwritten, and each letter was a different color, and it was, like her
great.
best writing, like she really
Hmm.
took the time. So the difference between "thank you so much, what a beautiful card" and "thank you so much," it's clear to me that you spent a lot of time and effort working on this card, which just
Hmm.
is so juicy for me as a mom because it really shows how much you care. Like that's the difference.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. And even the people that we don't have such close relationships with that we just, pass by day to day. I think it helps if, let's say someone gives up their seat for you on the bus because you look really tired. There's sort of a defensiveness that can come when someone does us a favor or is kind to us. Um, but instead of that, to just be like, oh, wow, thank you for that. You must have noticed I was really tired today. Like I'm recognizing that they took a minute to notice me. And it doesn't have to be effusive, but just like, oh, you must have really seen that I needed that. Just kind of acknowledging each other's humanity, but not in like an overbearing way. I do feel like you can see people like, oh, yeah, like we connect a little bit. And I think defensiveness is often a natural reaction to someone's kindness. Um, and that's another interesting piece of this puzzle, is
Yeah.
recognizing that.
What's going on there, just out of curiosity?
Um, I think it comes down to that humility that comes with gratitude is that, I had a need, you met a need I had, and that's a vulnerability, right? And if it's someone that, maybe we have history with, and, we feel like they're not really intending to benefit us, they're kind of like, being patronizing. It's like complicated, all these things that we're having to do with our perspective taking and our reasoning systems in the brain. It is hard work. But sometimes it's just someone's doing something nice for us that we should acknowledge, right? And by being specific about it, that is, it makes that connection between two people a little bit stronger.
Love that. Love that. I want to do a follow-up question, but to do it, I want to provide context for it. And so
Okay.
I'm going to ask if you could describe what neuroplasticity is all about. So, because the idea of neuroplasticity is that we can become better at a particular trait. So, yeah, as the scientist in the room, could you tell us what that's about?
Sure. So, classically, neuroplasticity would be just how our brains are built when we're little. So like when an infant is born, their brain has more connections than any adult. They have all this raw material. Their little neurons have migrated out to where they're going to be in the brain, and each neuron has put out a billion branches to other neurons. And there's way more raw material than is useful, and it can actually be a little chaotic in there, right? Now, through experience, through the things they see in the world, the things they touch and feel in the world, that raw material of connections between neurons gets pruned away. And some of those neurons, um, die through a process called apoptosis, and some of the neurons stick around. So the ones that stick around are the ones that have made connections to other neurons that are stable and reliable. So we say neurons that fire together, wire together. Now, most of the brain is pretty much set up for this process when we're born, but there's a ton of refinement that happens during development. different systems in the brain go through this process of pruning at different ages. So the first stuff that we prune away is our senses, like hearing and vision. That part of the brain gets sort of refined and becomes a little crystallized, less flexible when you're really young, which is why it's, beneficial to correct vision issues, for example, when someone's younger. Now, other parts of the brain stay plastic a really, really long time. And a lot of us have heard the soundbite that the brain isn't mature until we're 25. What that's relating to is the fact that our frontal lobes, the prefrontal cortex specifically, is still quite plastic and is still, getting refined that late in life. Um, but there isn't a point where our brain is just done. Like otherwise my 80-year-old grandmother would never learn the word YouTube, right? But she did learn the word YouTube, even though it's not a word that she grew up with, right? So there are systems of the brain that remain plastic. What's going on there isn't that we're sprouting a ton of new connections all the time the way we were when we were little. What we're doing is increasing the strength of the connections we already have. So there's neurotransmitters and hormones in the brain that can signal us to, grow these additional synaptic connections, we call them. They're the little places where the cells nearly touch and communicate with each other. So what we're doing when we are learning new things in adulthood, or practicing new ways of thinking, is we're refining and increasing, decreasing the connections between different parts of the brain that are already existing. It's kind of like, um, in changing the focus on something, changing a filter on something that your brain is processing.
So I remember studying, not as a neuroscientist, but somebody who's keenly interested in how empathy could improve our relationships and our leadership style, and how, enlarging our circle of empathy to more and more people could actually have big implications in terms of how society organizes itself.
Mm,
I discovered there's the neuroplasticity, that we could become more empathic with practice. That really caught my attention.
mm-hmm,
As a grad student, thinking, okay, well, let me try some. They weren't pure empathy exercises. I guess that you could say they entered the space of altruistic exercises. I had tried a bunch of different things. And one of them that really stayed with me is that, so in Canada, we have a coffee shop known as Tim Hortons. Okay, it's all across the country. It was once Canadian owned, now it's American owned, but everybody goes to Tim Hortons in Canada. And I had a car and I would do the drive-through. And if the person behind me ordered something that was under $5, I would sometimes, not always, pay it forward. And in the beginning of this experiment, I would drive off and I would kind of look in the back, in the rear view mirror, to catch the sort of, hey, thank you, buddy, or just the smile from the gift of, oh, somebody, paid for my coffee. And then I realized that, like, I'm really getting a payoff here. Like, this is all kind of about me now. So then I switched it up a bit, and I'd still do the pay it forward, but I would drive off and not look back and just carry on with my day. And I found myself actually really looking forward to those drive-throughs, and really looking forward to the rest of my day, just knowing that I'd done it without getting this sort of payoff. So could you explain to me what happened there?
mm. That's amazing. I love this example. I'm going to toy with it a little bit here. So the first thing that kind of comes to mind is like, you still getting a payoff. It's just you're in control of that payoff, right?
Yeah.
And I don't subscribe to the idea that for something to be, um, morally good or, beneficial or kind, that we don't get a payoff either.
Mm.
I think it's part of how we're wired as human beings, that it's virtuous to feel good when we do something kind for others. But what you've done by not sort of looking back and expecting that someone's going to give you that payoff is you've sort of taken the power of that feeling good into yourself,
Mm.
and you have suppose the someone flips you the bird and flips you off, does a rude gesture instead of a wave, by not really looking back, you haven't hung your goodness on the way they respond. So I guess that's one way to think about it. I don't love all aspects of that. But what do you think? Like, um, I think I guess like for me, it's good to feel good when you do kind things, right? And in some ways it is good to connect with that person. Like there can be a benefit to them getting a chance to say thank you too, right? Like I'm a person, you're a person, thanks. So maybe do it half and half. Do an
Yeah,
experiment.
I buy that because I think the reason why I moved to the second level was I never wanted to approach it as in I'm doing this because I want the payoff. I'm
Hmm.
kind because I want to feel good about myself. And some philanthropy and some charity can be like that. Either like
Right.
making a donation so I don't feel guilty or making a donation so I feel better about myself. I think if you lean into generosity and altruism from the point of view of I really want to do this. This is part of
Hmm.
my moral code, or this is in alignment with what I'm feeling in the moment. And if I do feel better, how great. Like, how nice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So that's,
I totally agree. Yeah. And I guess what it's like an exercise as well that you're sort of like we do, squats in the gym or something. You're like, I'm going to work on making sure that I'm doing this because I want someone to feel good. And that's makes me feel good,
hmm.
regardless. But that's not why I'm doing, I don't know. It's just like you're practicing, um, yeah, practicing it being more altruistic and
Hmm.
less transactional,
I
maybe.
do know that your research talks about altruism and the link between gratitude and altruism and pro-social behavior. I want to get into that. But just before that, I'll ask the question. Um, how can we become more like, how can we develop our capacity for gratitude, knowing that we have neuroplasticity? So what are the ways that we can
Hmm.
practice being more grateful?
Um, well, I know, there's a ton of evidence on gratitude journaling. I think the reason there's so much evidence on that isn't necessarily that it is the best or the only way to improve our gratitude. It's a good way to do a study where you can ask someone to do a gratitude journal and look at how their brain or how their behavior or well-being changes with time. So it's a very convenient way to do that.
Mm.
I wonder how it's going to change with across time, like with the different generation of people and the way they express themselves. Um, so, for example, can you take pictures and, build a photo board? What about, recording a message to someone expressing gratitude as opposed to writing a journal entry? I think it's more about the intentional action of gratitude, kind of holding yourself to um, take the time to note that you're appreciating a benefit that someone else had a good intent for you. And that final stage of wanting to express or going ahead and expressing your gratitude to someone else. It can help you take the time to do each of those things if you journal, but there's lots of other ways you can do that too. Like I have on my phone, I have like a album that is just like my gratitude album. And I snap pictures of things, and drag them into my album. And it's my way of um, paying attention and, remembering and um, just feeling good.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. I remember years ago, for I think it was even Oprah actually that many years ago, where she invited a guest who was a big believer in gratitude journals and said, okay, just take on the experiment of 30 days, write three
Hmm.
things you're grateful for and see what happens. And so when I did this, what I discovered, and I don't remember which day it happened, but let's say at least halfway through this experiment, 10 days, 2 weeks in, I started paying attention throughout my day. Some
Yes.
I noticed what I could put into my gratitude journal. And that for me was a really important takeaway that not only is it helpful to just at the end of the day appreciate or, be grateful for what's happened, but knowing that you're going to do that at the end of the night, you'll catch the green light when you're in a rush and say, "Oh, I could put that in my gratitude journal."
Hmm.
And that it has sort of, a ripple effect to how you show up in the world.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I do think so. Yeah, that through having to kind of report back out, it makes us more conscious of things. And so much can just slide right by us. You mentioned driving, and we can, drive a route and realize when we get there that we don't remember driving, um, because we have busy minds. So by journaling, you're taking the time to distill, to curate the little events of the day to kind of put together into a reflection. Maybe, photos, videos that can do a similar thing. That'd be an interesting experiment too, to see if it's actually the reflection at the end of the day that matters, or whether it's, um, noticing those things in the moment.
But I love the fact that you're sort of like entering 2025 or bringing up 2025. It doesn't have to be like handwritten journal, although I love the act of handwriting, but there are other modalities and other platforms that you can use in this digital age that could accomplish the same thing. I love, 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 love that.
Yeah,
One thing
my students are all like 20 or younger, and they're not going to necessarily journal. Some do, but
to do. Yeah. Okay. So since we're talking about students, let's talk. Let me ask you about something else. Also picked up from a positive psychology handbook of practices is to take, 10 or 15 minutes of class time and give them the opportunity to write a thank you note to somebody who has done something or meant a lot to them in their life. And so they'll do that. And then the invitation is now go call that person and read the letter. And, they come back and there's tears that have been shed, and like the whole vibrational field of the room is kind of, filled with fairy dust. Can you explain what's going on there?
that's amazing. Absolutely. Like they're, I think expressing gratitude is critical. I think it's what we're motivated to do. And when we don't, we do feel guilty, right? Or, um, and it's different than indebtedness, right? Like I have to pay something back so I don't owe you. It's more like I want to do for you because I want us to be closer. Like that's kind of a way that it's a subtext, with those humble expressions of gratitude that can be so transformative. And wouldn't it be lovely if people felt like they could be that vulnerable every day, right?
Mhm.
Um, could be that humble to say, like, I see what you did for me, and I was needy, and you gave me something I needed.
Well, I love the fact that positive psychology research flies in the face of the whole selfish gene theory.
Hmm.
I wonder if we could speak a little bit to some of the research that you have spearheaded around the link between gratitude and altruism and pro-social behavior. Like, could you unpack maybe one or two of your studies that you're really excited about?
Yeah, I think when we take like this bigger view of gratitude where it's not just um hashtag grateful like when we're on the yacht taking a selfie or something, but when we take the big view of why it's really like a moral emotion, why it's compelling, why it's an investment that pays back over time, it really is because of this um, motivation we have to express what we feel and to build a bridge with someone else. So the study I did, we randomly assigned gratitude journals to some students. They did gratitude journals for I think 3 weeks, and we did brain imaging before and after that period of time. And there was a control group where they just journaled about everyday activities. It wasn't focused on negative or positive things, just sort of everyday, um, what happened today kinds of prompts. And when they were in the brain scanner, we had them do a task where they were participating in a donation kind of challenge situation. So they were watching real money getting deposited in their personal account, so to speak, that they would be able to leave with at the end of the brain imaging session, or money was getting deposited into a charities bank, and that money was actually donated to the charity at the end of the study. And so we could compare how the brain's reward processing signals changed based on whether they were getting the reward or the charity was getting the reward. And the hypothesis was that if gratitude really does encourage us to give to others, right, to give back or to express gratitude, then what we should see is that by the end of the study, folks are going to have more of that reward signal in the brain for when the charity gets money compared to when they themselves get that money. Um, so when we did the study, that is in fact what we found, that compared to the control group that was just journaling about their everyday experiences, the folks that were journaling about gratitude, when they did that task at the second time, now their brains were actually giving them that reward signal for the charity getting the money rather than themselves. Um, so if all we were doing was appreciating, but we didn't have this kind of social component, the empathy, wanting to build a relationship with someone or grow closer in some way, then what we'd expect is that they're just going to get even more reward when they get money in their account, but that's not what we found at all. Um, so you could imagine a different kind of manipulation that would make people more selfish or something like that. We didn't do that, but we did see that you could actually change the way that the brain's reward processing systems were responding to this kind of altruistic task.
So that leads nicely to, I can't believe we're running at the clock here, to maybe a penultimate question, which is at the social level. So the Inner Development Goals framework is a set of 23 skills, competencies that leaders can develop to be the kind of leaders that the world needs right now. In the face of polycrisis and a sense that there's a lot of people that are hurting, and that wouldn't we prefer if a lot more people were flourishing, right? So that's the genesis of all these conversations that I'm having. So I wonder, given everything that's going on in the world, whether we're, looking at climate change, or we're looking at income inequality, we're looking at political polarization, we're looking at the rise of totalitarianism, like all this stuff that's going on, what's little old gratitude got to say? And why is this important, right? Like the IDG framers said, okay, appreciation slash, maybe I'm putting the slash gratitude in the mix. Why is that so important at a larger social level?
Hmm. I think um, when when we're hungry, we need to eat, but we need to eat something nourishing, right? And uh, I think people are hungry right now for connection with others, for meaning, right? We're not hungry for, more stuff. If we're talking about Western industrialized countries, we're hungry for meaning and purpose and connection with others. Gratitude is one way that we can enrich our relationships with other people, right? It's a way to feel stronger and less anxious in yourself, but also a way to connect with others. So I think of it as sort of like nourishing food as opposed to junk food. Like it's what's going to help us feel satisfied. And I think you know there's a lot of struggle in the world, and I don't want to minimize any of that. But it's that once our basic needs are met for, shelter, food, safety, like once those really basic needs are met, then we're struggling even more, I think, today to make those meaningful connections with other people.
And that nourishes us as a
I think so.
as a
Yeah.
living creature, right? Which is why.
Right.
So, I mean, let me ask you, do you believe that that's connected to the rise of mental health issues? Is that in the absence of those purpose-driven, meaningful relationships where you feel a sense of belonging and a community is there to, to be helpful in a crisis, like all of that, we are desperate for more of that.
Yeah, I think so. And we, we don't want to just receive, we want to give also. So those of us that can, if our basic needs are met and we can do, things for others, that's good for us as well. And that's probably the first action that we need to be careful that we're actually making is that we're putting ourselves out there to give back. And gratitude can be a way to motivate us, right? And to feed us to take those risks.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Which dovetails nicely to the last question, which I ask of all the guests, all my guests. And thank you for spending this nearly hour together. Can you think of a time, Christina, in your life when you were on the receiving end of empathy? This is a podcast ultimately about empathy, and what that meant for you.
Um, I love this question, and there are like, I'm sure you get so many different kinds of answers.
Yep.
I love the day-to-day kinds of exchanges we have with people. So I'll t the little story is about actually the gratitude research and how I sort of moved as a someone studying neuroplasticity in the brain into looking more at positive psychology and pro-social emotion. So I still remember I was having a really rough day. And I was in the market and ran into an acquaintance, a friend of a friend, and she asked the usual kind of like, "Oh, how are you?" And I was just like, doing the thing we do where we kind of complain a bit as our small talk. Oh, it's just been really rough, blah, blah, blah. I'm stressed out because of this and that. And she just looked at me and she was like, "Oh, yeah." And with complete like kindness and focus was just like, and sometimes gratitude isn't enough, right? And it was like, I hadn't really thought of gratitude in that way until that moment. And it just really like was like a lightning bolt into my mind. Like, what am I talking about? Like, I have so much to be grateful for. Um, and she took a risk in that moment of not just going down the pathway of, oh yeah, me too. Life sucks, blah, blah, blah. But actually like, wow, yeah. And sometimes we don't feel like gratitude's enough. Um, so it really stuck with me, and it was a couple weeks later, I think, that I saw the opportunity come through from UC Berkeley's Greater Good Science Center to apply for a grant in this area. And a whole bunch of different things in life just sort of came together like, this is really something I need to spend some time thinking about and doing. And I just kind of threw myself at it, and I don't regret a minute of it. Um, but you never know, like when you are just really authentic with someone, how that's going to impact their life trajectory. Like that was 5 minutes of her time. I don't really remember her name even, but I remember this moment and how it kind of um, set me on a path toward being more authentic and helping other people with the nerdy skill set that I happen to have.
I love that story, and I'll tell you why I love the question is precisely you named it. I never know what I'm going to hear. Inevitably, every person has at least something that comes to mind, and sometimes really big stories that the empathy that they receive from others, whether it was through sort of perspective taking or intuition or emotional contagion, like it's made a big difference in someone's life. That is the gift that we can bestow on others. Showing,
Mhm.
extending empathy can really be game changing. You've just described how it impacted your career and sort of, the motivation you had for your life, which is amazing. Again, the invitation, like, let's all turn up the volume of empathy in our lives. Why wouldn't we want to, especially if we stand to benefit, that whole altruism. So I want to end our conversation just to say how much I appreciated learning from you, and I'm sure the listeners and viewers feel the same. And I want to also express my gratitude to you because there's a lot of things you could have done with this hour, and you've chosen to spend it with me and our listeners and viewers. And I think we're all just uplifted by that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. The feeling is mutual, darling. Yes, and when we do these things that bring light, like it just gives everyone more joy. So let's all keep it up as best we can, right?
Right. And with that, everybody watching and listening, well, thank you and see you next week at Purposeful Empathy. But take a minute to forward this show out to somebody you think might benefit too. Thank you, Christina, and see you all next week at Purposeful Empathy.
If you know someone who'd benefit from this episode, please share it with them. Post the link on your socials and hit the subscribe button now. The world needs more empathy, and you have an important role to play.